everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim Denock of Break the Meta and life coach. I laugh at this because I'm still kind of debating if that's how I want to bring up the life coach part. But it's starting to feel more and more natural. So like I'm kind of just slipping into it like a nice pair of jeans.
With lots of tugging and pulling.
No, it's a nice pair of jeans. You don't have to spend a lot of work to get it right. So it's one of those Levi's stretchy jeans that just feels so right. Anyways, welcome everybody, and welcome to Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked and talk about things that are going on in our personal lives and how we are specifically handling them. And this week is your week, Tim. And one of the things we're going to do is, at some point, the topic that we were going over last week on Friday and Saturday, we might go over this week or next, but I'm still planning on doing that. But this week, though, we really feel like we want to go into just some things that you were going through, Tim, and how you're processing them. So the topic that you specifically were bringing up to me today was just about, like, why God's not addressing things the way that you felt like he should have. Like, and that's something that I want to kind of, like, dig into your brain about, because that could go many different ways. I can go in the direction of, like, why is he not answering me the way that I thought he was going to answer me? Why is he not solve this issue that I've been expecting him to solve? So, like, what specifically is hitting you in this area?
Oh boy. So, I mean, with you guys, I've for a while now talked about different things like insecurity, lack of value, trying to figure out my place as a husband, as a leader, as somebody in society that's trying to do something. Like, who am I? Specifically, what's my value and all this stuff? And, last night was kind of tough. There's things were hitting me in different ways and had me questioning some of my relationships and how I was engaging in them. And this morning I woke up and I was like, you wake up and you're just pissed off. You just wake up and it's like, I don't want to be awake. I don't want to do what I need to do today. I'm just like, nothing better get in my way.
Woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah. And, even when I wake up like that sometimes, most of the time, I'm able to respond and just be chipper. And I'm not a morning person, but I'm a happy person in the morning, if that makes sense. Yeah, actually, I'm pretty much always a happy person.
Yeah. Fair.
But today was a little different. Ariane and I were sitting at the table and we were about to go to the gym. And I just didn't want to go, and I was frustrated with her, and I was frustrated with me. I was frustrated with what's in here and what's in here and just all of this. I was just frustrated, And so we were just talking, and I ended up not going to the gym. I just decided I need to spend some intentional time with Jesus. And so I came up here in a little prayer room across the hall. I just sat there. And I was like, all right, God, I'm here. I'm doing my religious duty. Not that that's a religious duty. I'm kidding. But I was just sitting there on the bed. I took out my little journal and I said, all right, God, I'm going to ask you some questions and I'm going to write down how you responded. And I asked them two specific questions. I said, what do you think about all this? And how do you feel? I was like, okay, I mean, that's pretty much going to be our conversation. And I remember writing those down and I felt like, I'm just going to play my guitar. So I just picked up my guitar and I just started playing, and I didn't even talk to God. And I'm just sitting here messing around. And you know how you'll strive to do something for a long time, you'll practice and you'll try, and you just can't get it. Yeah. And then one day you just engage in it again. It's like, I can do this, And today was one of those situations. Like, I love percussive guitar. And for those of you who don't know what it is, I don't even know if that's the actual term, but it's when you play the percussion, the drum beat and stuff with your the palm of your hand while you're playing. And for some reason, that just came out of me today. Like I was able to do it and keep rhythm, and it was just like I've tried so hard to do this in the past, and I couldn't do it. And today it was just like, here we go. So I did that for about an hour. I felt like I heard God say, write this down. And it was chord progressions for a song I was learning. And then I felt like I heard God telling me that when you get the rhythm, it gets a lot easier. Or something to that effect. I'd go get my journal and recite it exactly, but it's across the hall. But anyways, he said something along the lines of like getting into the rhythm. Like once you get into the rhythm of it, or once you learn the rhythm, it's so much easier, and you just kind of like flow with it. Because Brandon, you and I have been talking recently about me getting back into the flow of things and getting outside of my head. Quit thinking so hard. Quit trying to be something I'm not. Quit trying to be a type A personality that has everything in order and is neat and tidy. That is not who I am. I need to stop trying to be that, because it's like I can focus on being this person over here, that who I am, I completely lose. And the way that God made me is perfect. I'm not a perfect person, but I'm made very intentionally with different tendencies and different preferences. And I have strengths that I need to lean into, and stop trying to lean into these strengths that I don't naturally have. Right? I'm supposed to work on those. But anyways, I was like, all right. So I asked God what he thinks about all the stuff that's been going on, because I've been thinking, okay, well, am I valuable? And, why do I always feel like I'm striving to do things? And, I'm having difficulty connecting with this person. And if only I was naturally inclined towards this mode of thought, these relationships would be so much easier. I'm like, all right, so what God told me through all that is a chord progression in a song and something about rhythm. All right, God, well, let's move on to the second question. Well, how do you feel right now? And he said, excited. I'm like, you're excited? What? Dude, like, why are you excited about something that frustrates me? And, I spent 2 hours in that room. It was just me and God just doing whatever, and it felt like I was just being irresponsible. But looking back on that time, I was just thinking to myself, okay, so God did not address what I wanted him to address. I said, I'm feeling this way, I'm doing this, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm frustrated with this, and I've got this insecurity, and I've got this shortcoming, and God help me with this. What do you think about it? And he didn't even talk about it. Didn't even address it.
Yeah.
And so here we are, Get Naked Monday, episode whatever. Why God doesn't address things in the way we think he should.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's kind of interesting that, you can have a king and you go before the king and you have a very specific question, because if you think about old times, right, you'd be granted an audience with the king and you'd go in and it'd be very specific, right? Well, what is your question? Well, my question is this. Well, here's your answer. Now be gone. The king has other things to do, but, my king, my father, God, spends every single second of every single day with me. I can ask him any amount of questions, and we have all the time in the world. And he chose not to address the question I was asking, And I think about confidence, and I think about all the things that I want to have, and it comes from a position of life and not death, And it's weird. I wanted God to just give me some magical phrase or a magical revelation or whatever on how I was feeling, what I was thinking. But that's not what he did. He was like, I'm not even going to bother with that. That's not even worth my time because it's not true anyways. Why are you sitting there? Come over here in the water where we're talking about being excited and talking about music and talking about like just keeping the rhythm and being present. But yeah, that's my mode of thought today. Just thinking more about being present and how God doesn't even waste time on the stuff that's not true. He doesn't even engage it. Or at least this situation. Like, have you ever had that happen in your life?
Oh, I've definitely had some situations where I'm going to God about one thing and we're going on to another topic. Like, I had several situations like that last year that I can recall of, one of which was when I was taking a walk at night And I wanted to figure out what the deal was with swearing. Like,
Hmm.
what is God's position on swearing? I desperately want to know because with Thought Raid, we are a ministry and a community, and so I don't want to lead anyone astray because like I know that there's parts of the Bible that says don't let any unclean talk come from your lips or whatever. So it's just like I grapple with that, but then I've also heard the argument of the I don't want to have society determine what is and is not bad words. Like,
Hmm.
unless if God were to say this is a bad word, well then that's something specific. And then I go back onto like, well, you have Paul talking about things that are that he won't do because it causes other people to stumble, and if it causes that person to stumble, then I'll never do it again. So just like, what do I do? What do I do? And so I'm going to God about this, and God's like, we're not going to address that. There are bigger fish to fry. And I'm like, what?
Hmm.
What? Like, this is literally something that could be very important, and like, I want to know this for the sake of the rest of the community in Thought Raid so that I can talk with knowledge on this situation. And you're not going to address this. You're going to talk about other things. Okay. And consequently, during the day after I had that conversation, I started to have to deal with porn again. So that was the bigger fish to fry, apparently. Uh,
Hmm.
but it was just interesting about we're gonna shift away from what you think is important right now to what I think is important. Or you go again on the topic of porn, you go forward to this year or this year, and I'm trying to deal with it heavily, and God's like, there are other things that I'm working on right now, and if I'm not worried about this particular area, I don't want you to be worried about it either. Like,
Hmm.
just again, just like we're just shifted onto you need to focus on being at peace and to trust that you hear my voice and to be obedient. Not let's get the porn out of your life because it's going to be dealt with. Like, it is
Hmm.
a weed, it is a problem, but I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to deal with it at the right time. But until then, you need to focus on being at peace. Well, lo and behold, now we finally come up to this more recent time where God begins to reveal to me storms, emotional storms, which we did a whole thought rate on, lust storms, just different types of storms where it's just like I get this raging whatever on the inside of me, and I have the option to lose my peace and to partner with the storm and to like identify with what I'm feeling, or I can trust that this is nothing to do with who I am. And it's just a storm, and storms will come and storms will go, and I can be at peace and not worry about it. And that's where I've been. I've just been as of late, like, you know, I don't have to like do anything with this storm. I can just sit it out and let it pass me, and we're good, and it will go away. I won't feel lustful the whole day. I
You
won't
know,
feel afraid the whole day. That is just something that will come and it will go. Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna. I'm thinking in the mode. I hung out with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about therapy, and they've been to therapy, and recently they were diagnosed with something, and I don't know. I think it's really good for people to have somebody to talk to, but at the same time, I think going to somebody to talk to them about something that God needs to show you, um, it can be kind of damaging because just thinking about our accountability group,
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, and talking about porn and me talking about insecurity. Like if we go back, we've been doing Thought Raid for about a year now,
Mm-hmm.
and if we go back through all the Thought Raids, if I counted, I've probably mentioned my insecurities or just whatever 100 different times in the past year. Um, and I'm just thinking about how when Jesus was crossing the sea, even though his disciples walked with the dude, saw him do miracles, knew that he was the Son of God and everything, um, the boat started getting rocky and the storm started getting them all scared and whatnot. And they said, Jesus, wake up, this is happening. He rebukes the storm. He wakes up and rebukes the storm. And he's like, guys, where's your faith? Right. Like he wasn't shaken by that. And I think it's God's just trying to talk to me right now about the things that we create in our minds as like big deals. And we're supposed to engage them for a season and just remind ourselves of the truth. But I was listening to Beth Johnson. It was a sermon that she spoke on from January, I think, and the power of the spoken word. Not specifically like verbally spoken, but internally spoken, words that are spoken over you. And she was talking about how in Genesis, the whole story of the Bible says in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was one with God, or whatever. And I'm just thinking about my internal dialogue and how frequently I engage that. And I think, oh, I just had this struggle. God help me with this, right? Or like, oh, well, I did A, B, and C. And the reasoning for that is because, well, in the past, I've had reason to struggle with insecurity, or I've had reason to struggle with being a certain way. But it's like, how many times am I going to return to the vomit before I choose to just acknowledge what God's already done and the truths that he's always telling me about? Because it's like when I had my job and I had employees and they kept asking me the same question. The first time it's like, okay, you're asking me because you don't know. The second time they asked me because, okay, well, you haven't quite grasped it. But 3 or 4 months down the road, if they're asking me the same question, and we had a model called show and tell. You show them how to do it, then you tell them how to do it and why you do it, right? You can only do the show and tell model so many times before you realize that somebody's just not doing their part. And so with all of this, God, for the past year, we've talked about this. I've had you guys as my support group. I've had my wife as my support group. I've had God. There's so much grace that I've received and grace that I've taken. And it's like grace. Yeah, it says, my grace is sufficient. But at some point we have to realize that we have to be accountable for our part in it. If it's truly a relationship, like how many of us really go to God and say, God, here's what's on my heart. Here's what I think that I'm dealing with. And then they shut up, listen, and just have a dialogue back and forth. But in that sermon, Beth said a lot of times people go to God and they just lay their stuff at his feet and then go about their day. And I think part of this that I'm going through is doing that too frequently. And God's like, dude, you've been at this for a year. I've given you opportunities to talk to people. I've loved you. I've given you grace. I've inspired other people to give you grace. I've inspired people to encourage you and lift you up. It's about time you move on from this, so we're not even going to talk about it. I mean, just thinking about expanding your worldview and your perspective and growing as a leader and having more and more and more impact, the things that bother me now, if I'm the leader and the person of impact that I want to be 10 years from now, they can't have the same level of severity in my life. And I'm just thinking about how God's perspective on that, like he sees where I want to go and he sees where he wants me and where I'm willing to go. And, it's really encouraging that he didn't respond to me this morning the way that I thought he would. I thought he was going to say, well, here's why you feel this. And Tim, I love you. And, I've forgiven you for your past and all this stuff, but he's already done that. It's already been done. It's already been established. It's already been part of our conversation. But, there's two ways I can look at this. Either, God, you didn't engage me in the way that I thought that you were going to. You didn't tell me what I thought that you should have told me. Our conversation didn't go the way that I was thinking it would. You completely ignored what I asked you. You must be a crappy person. You must hate me. I've done something wrong. Oh, no. I've been lazy. Oh, I got to work harder so that you'll actually talk to me. I could look at it from that perspective, or I could just realize, okay, so God, you're not engaging in that. So you're leading me by example. You're saying, Tim, this isn't worth our time. I want you to focus on what I want you to do. I want you to focus on where you're going instead of where you came from. I mean, we did a whole thought rate on this several months ago about looking forward, not looking back, not looking in the rear view. And just engaging with God about that this morning, and him saying, well, here's where we're going to focus. It's so encouraging. It's encouraging that he believes enough in me to discern that that's what he's trying to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much you can gain from somebody, so much that you can discern from somebody when you engage with them about what they're choosing not to say. Like when I know that I'm irritating my wife and she's not saying anything about it, I know that she's intentionally having to choose to love me in those moments. And she doesn't have to say, Tim, you're pissing me off, and it's taken everything I've got to not tell you how to. No, when she's doing that, she's excuse me, I can tell. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's just very encouraging.
It's interesting. I see. I've been really processing the past year of why the whole year I struggled with porn as I did, and I'm not
tendencies.
the tendencies. I really I really don't regret the struggles or things that I went through with all the questions and stuff, because it's like one of the things I think that God really taught me to get me to this place where he can say, Brandon, it's just a storm, suck it up and work through the storm. Is there was just a lot of nuances that he was able to address. Like one of the things I don't want to have is I don't want people to walk out and think, because I'm still going through this, like that it's the end of the world. Like there is absolute grace. We do want to get you to a place where you don't have to keep going to God over the same things. But if you are, there's grace for that. Like the whole last year, there was so many nuances that I had to address to recognize that I truly am free from porn. I really am. I it's just, but like I had somehow come to this belief that because storms showed up in my life, therefore that meant that I'm not through with it yet, and there's something that God has to work on. But at the end of that year and coming into this year, what I began to realize is that, heck, I've been doing everything. Like there's clearly no space for this in my heart because I don't want it. There's no part of me that thinks, oh yeah, porn's okay, this is fine. Like no part of me thought that. Like I did everything that I knew to do, being accountable, talking about it, not being secretive, praying about all that kind of stuff, and yet that's still coming. And so like now we get to this place where it's like, okay, God, what do I need to do? I'm getting nothing from him. And the reason why he's not answering it, like we've been talking about, the way I think he should, is because there really is no place in my heart for it. And so now there's no reason to keep addressing the storms. Like honestly, if the disciples weren't afraid, Jesus probably would have not stopped the storm. Probably wouldn't happen. The storm would have kept raging, and it kept being tossed and turned around, and then they would make it to their destination. But that's just something that I feel like God's been like revealing to me. It's like Jesus is calling me to a whole new level of peace, that I can be peaceful in the storm because it's just a storm. And it will pass. And I could ask, well, why are you not dealing with this storm? Why are you not getting rid of the storm? I want God to take care of the storm. The reaction I want from God is for him to just say, well, there'll be no storm in your life. Peace, be still. Get out of here, storms of insecurity. Get out of here, storms of lust. Get out of here, storms of anxiety. No. If he keeps taking care of every storm that comes my way, I'm never going to know how to deal with this, because the storm brings good things. Okay, storms bring rain. The lightning in the sky causes certain chemicals to fuse, which brings nutrients to the soil. The wind blows out impurities in the air. Like, storms are good things. They're not bad things. I should not pray away every storm that I face. So in the sense of a emotional storm, if God took away every storm that I felt, there would be like what happens when worse things happen to me? Where's the strength then? Like, there's just, like, the storms produce endurance within me that enable me to continue going forward when worse things hit me. And I'm sure there will be worse things as an adult, you know, if I end up having a family, having things to deal with my kids, my wife, whatever, you know. And so how am I going to be prepared for that if I'm being blown down I'm allowing myself to be blown down by every storm because I'm identifying with the storm?
You know, there's a lot of people that I see in life, and it's like everything that hits them is a travesty. You know, if I look at toddlers or, you know, kids younger than the age of 10, it's like everything that happens, like, oh no, they stole my toy, or oh no, my ice cream fell on the floor, or whatever, and they just like fall apart, you know. It's like as you go through life, you learn that those things really aren't that big of a deal. But it's weird. It's like when you become an adult, you know, and you start paying for all your own bills, and you do things on your own, and like you can comfortably live in a house or an apartment or wherever you live by yourself without somebody telling you to go to work or to wipe your butt or whatever, you know. And it's like, okay, well, since I've arrived and I'm an adult, all the problems that I'm facing right now must be actual things that I'm never going to fix, you know. But I'm just thinking about how the more I become an adult, because I mean, I'll be 37 this year. I guess that's an adult. You know, that's crazy. Like this person on the screen is going to be 37. Whoa.
Wow.
But, you know, the older I get, the more I realize, and I think I said this last stream, the more I realize that I'm being called to be more like a child. Not irresponsible like a child, but as far as a relationship with God, just having faith. You know, because I guess somewhere in my young adulthood where I'm starting to move out on my own, and I come out in those like uncharted waters and stuff, and everything's all foggy, I start thinking, okay, well, if I don't do this, nobody else will. And I mix up responsibility with inheritance. I guess that's how I want to put that, you know, because there are things I'm responsible for, you know, but there are certain things that God's already taken care of. Like he's already found a way, and he's already paid for me to be healthy. He's already paid for me, all my needs to be met. He's already paid for me to have peace, to have a sound mind, to go to bed at night and, you know, not wrestle with thoughts of doubt or what. Like that's already been paid for, you know. But I'm just thinking of how when parents drag their kids along, you know, the kids will have different objections for whatever. They'll stop and their focus will be on this thing over here when the parent is focused on getting to the goal or like what they're going to or where they're going that day. I just think it's funny how God will actually stop and engage some of the things just because he sees that it really messes with us to a point. And then after that, he's like, all right, dude, you know, we've talked about this 20 times. Come on. We're just going to keep going. But that's also tough, you know, like in my own life, I can think that, but when it comes to the point where the rubber meets the road, that's so much harder to action. And with other people too, like that, once again, the porn accountability group that we're in, you know, we've talked about porn so much. At some point, I'm like, guys, I get it. You know, this is something we talk about. This is something that we all deal with. It's something that we want to be accountable to because we don't want it. But how long are we going to keep making this a thing? You know, let's just take it for what it is. We know where we're going. We know who we are. We know that God's working on this. Let's just not talk about it anymore. Let's just move past it, you know, and how to do that while still having empathy. Yeah. I think that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, and because the whole thing that I was going through that whole time, for whatever reason, I did not know that this was, I had experienced it before of like, you know, I feel something, I need to power through it. But my understanding, the way I perceived it was incorrect, where it was still work-based. Like it was still anxiety-ridden and work-based. There was no, I don't want to say freedom per se. There was just no, I don't know. All the tools that I had to resist porn before 2020 were mostly anxiety based. And so I had to relearn my identity, which ironically it was 7 years that I went without dealing with it whatsoever. And they say again that your whole body goes through an entire cycle through the course of 7 years. So I mean, you could say that I'm a different person than I was 7 years ago, and you'd be partially right. Science would back you, but regardless, I'd made some big strides in confidence, big strides in peace, and so now I needed to know once again who I was apart from anxiety, which was a large aspect of my personality up to that point that was addressed all throughout the 2010s. And so, like, by the time we got to 2020, it was like, okay, new tools were needed. And all the things that I used to use, I didn't know how to apply them because I wanted to make sure, the main thing that I wanted to make sure all of 2020 was that is there anything in me that is not properly addressed that is making this harder than it needs to be? Because I don't want it there. And I can't, after going through it and going through it and going through it all of that year, I just kind of came to the place where I realized, no, like, there's nothing secret. Like, there might have been like one thing, because I talked about this particular counseling session I had with you, which that was very fundamental in helping. But besides that, there wasn't really anything else. It was just a matter of realizing that this is just emotions. This is just feelings. This is just the temptation. I am not defined by the temptation to look at porn. I am not defined by the temptation to feel insecure. I'm not defined by the temptation to be anxious. I have the choice and the right to either sink in the storm or just walk through it or sleep through it, however it may be applicable in the moment. And I wanted desperately for God to take away the temptation all of 2020. That's what I wanted, because I felt like there was something within me that was wrong. And honestly, I mean, yeah, you got your carnal sin nature that's always going to be there until it gets redeemed. But other than that, there really wasn't anything. And it took me a year to realize that I'm doing everything I can, so it's not me. It's just, well, I mean, it was me and it wasn't me. It was me in the sense that, like, I wasn't realizing that this is just a storm that I can weather, but it also wasn't me that there was no secret place in my heart or something that needed to be dealt with. And all the last year talking about, again, to the topic of why is God not addressing things I wanted him to do, it was because all along, nothing was wrong. And I think that's kind of cool when it comes to you being angry this morning. Nothing was wrong. Like, nothing was wrong. And, like, the fact that God was excited, like, I kind of get why he's excited, because one of the things that I've been working on this week is, instead of coming to God with my laundry list of things that I pray about in the morning of how I want my morning to look, instead I'm like, okay, let's just you and me talk, God, however that may look. And that's what I do. And I've been kind of experimenting with that. And so it was interesting when I was first introduced to the concept. Someone said they asked Jesus what his favorite color was, and the response was light. And if you think about it, light, you can bend light into all different types of colors of the spectrum. So it encompasses all color. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I didn't want to ask Jesus what his favorite color was, because I felt like I already knew the answer, but that was still a burning question in my mind. So eventually I got around to asking, and the response that he gave to me was, yeah, it was light, but also red. And I was like, okay, why red? And red represents life. If someone's alive, they have color pigment that's usually pink to some degree, and you might have more melanin in the skin, so you're more brown. But whatever the case is, like a non-cadaver, it has color to it, and that color consists of red. Blood is red. If you're embarrassed, your face is red. If you're angry, Your face is red. What happens when there's not red? You could be numb. Nothing is hitting you emotionally. That's not a good place to be. So when you're actually angry in the morning, things are bothering you, there's life inside of you. There's passion inside of you. There's so many people that push down emotions and passions, and they just become numb. And that's no way to live. And so the fact that God's excited is probably because he's like, wow, Tim is expressing emotion about something. There's like life in him. And so it's an exciting moment. I mean, there's probably other reasons, obviously. But like just that something that kind of came to mind when you mentioned that he was excited and made me think about God talking about how he liked the color red.
Yeah. Well, what I think that he was, the reason he said he was excited was completely unrelated to what I was talking to him about. It's like his mind was over here and my mind was over here, and he's excited about what's over here. He's like trying to distract me from the thing that I'm focused on because it's not healthy. He's like, dude, that's done. Come on, focus over here. I'm excited about this. This is going to be great. Stop looking that way. Come over here.
I'm just thinking, like, if I were counseling a person who would typically not want to feel certain emotions and suddenly they do, that's an exciting moment. Because it's like, finally, you have a real emotion. Like we can actually address stuff. We don't want to stay there in the anger, obviously. But, the Bible says be angry, but sin not. It's just like have anger. It's okay to be angry.
And the weird thing is when I was talking to Ariane this morning, I told her that I was angry. And I didn't really understand why. And she was like, that makes me happy. I'm like, what? Because, I don't get angry very often. And for those of you who know me, I'm extremely even. I'm probably one of the most even people you'll ever meet. And it's just because like emotions are scary, man. And especially when you've seen bad emotion modeled for you a large portion of your life. And I'm not calling out anybody in particular, just different people I've been in relationship with, and not people I've had relationships with, just in relationship of any sort. There wasn't a lot of healthy emotion that I saw growing up. So if anytime I feel a negative emotion, it's like, got to put a cap on that, and it almost makes me feel like a plastic me. We keep talking about plastic mode, how you can go into a certain situation and then your personality completely goes away because you think, okay, well, I need to put my best foot forward. And it's really tricky as Christians too, because we're supposed to be redeemed. We're supposed to have a renewed mind, and a lot of Christians take that as, oh, well, we can't swear, we can't sin, and it can't hurt our witness. Just, that drips with Christianese. But at the same time, we're supposed to be relatable, and having empathy the Bible even says, mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice. If people feel things, there's a reason why they feel that. We're not supposed to get in there with it, but we're supposed to be able to relate to it. And if people don't think that you're ever angry, if people don't ever think that you're ever sad about something, it's like, how the heck are they supposed to relate to you? Like I was talking to somebody the other day and they were talking about, what was it? Something about how they felt like they were sinning and they've turned away from their sins and they feel like God keeps them at arm's length because they have a laundry list of debt that they've accrued of sin. I'm like, I know that's not true, but why is that not true? Because guys, everything that has a truth is backed up in the Bible, right? If you think something, or if you think that you heard from God about something, it's usually supported. Well, it's always supported in the Bible, because the Bible is nothing more than a characterization of who he is. It's not a list of how do you convict somebody who's a homosexual. No, that's not at all what the Bible's about. The Bible's about, okay, well, who is Jesus? Like, what's his character like? What was I saying just a second ago?
Just talking about, originally we were talking about Plastic Tim, And then we got into talking about this person that you were counseling,
Oh,
or yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, and I was like, okay, well, in 1 Corinthians 13, it says that love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Interesting. So if God is who he says he is, and God is love, Jesus is love, he must not keep a record of wrongs. So how could I ever be in debt to him? With my sin, that is. Um, I don't know.
you
I
couldn't.
just,
You couldn't.
yeah, you can't. But the other thing is, that there's that scripture that says, love God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul, and then love others as you love yourself. How can you love yourself if you're keeping a record of your wrongs?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I've done this and I must be this because of this. And it's like,
No.
I get to throw that in the trash.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about having a relationship. I get to throw that in the trash and just focus on what God's excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. God does not keep. If you have genuinely recognized the error of your ways and you apologize for it and you turn face, like, God's not going to hold things. Like, it doesn't matter how many things you did. It's all fit and gone.
Mm-hmm.
Not coming back. Not there to haunt you. I mean, like, the only thing that's haunting you is you. Boo.
Mm-hmm.
And your own recollection of the situation. But Jesus does not waste time, like remember these things. Like, this is why we can't. No. Honestly, every time when I get it and I recognize where I was off an area, Jesus is, like, immediately there. Like, as if, I mean, granted, like, he's there constantly anyways. Like, honestly, sin doesn't necessarily separate God from us. It separates us from God. It's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So being sin conscious separates us from God, or at least being in communion with him. So even though he is still very much so there, ready to hug us, ready to talk to us, whatever, it's because we're so focused on the sin. He could say everything in the world that's great and wonderful, and we would not hear it. And we would instead continue to believe what is most convenient to believe about how terrible we are. And I think sometimes people get into that ditch because they're afraid of the other ditch of being prideful and nothing is wrong with me and I have no flaws, to the point of like not from like the righteous sense of it, but to the point of like I am perfect, I am God, like I am perfection incarnate. Like, okay, calm down. But at the same time, being in the other ditch of I'm terrible is still a ditch. Like, like Jesus has redeemed that stuff. We don't have to keep viewing ourselves as the mistakes we've made. It's done. It's done. You can start immediately with Jesus's record and keep moving from that place. Like, you want to start from I'm seated in heavenly places, like, with Jesus. Like, you want to start, don't start from I have to get there. Start from I am there. Because that's when you've accepted Christ, you're there.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about this morning, and this is kind of taking it to the next part of the conversation because we got about 15 more minutes. Once I disengaged those thoughts of just going back to the vomit, it just felt like my life had more life in it. Like I was excited, because God never focuses on death. He never focuses on, like, that's not his focus. He's already had the victory. He's already claimed that, So anytime that I get thoughts in my mind, or I think that I'm having a dialogue with God about, something I've done or where I'm going, and it just makes me feel horrible about myself or condemned, or it's circular and not in a good way. That's not actually a dialogue with God. So I need to throw it in the trash. And it's so crazy to me because it felt totally responsible to engage in that this morning. Like, why am I angry? Oh, I'm angry because I feel like I've been letting my relationships down. I'm angry because I felt like I was wronged in this way. And all this stuff. But it's like, no. It's irresponsible to engage in that because it's not healthy. And, it just seems too good to be true. So I was talking to somebody the other day about the goodness of God, and how simple the gospel is. And guys, if you don't understand the gospel, it's so simple. It's like if I had to quantify the gospel in one sentence, it's understanding that God wants relationship above all else. I mean that's it. That is it, you know? And
For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever will believe in him will not perish but have everlasting life. God so loved, he gave so that we can have.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and the more I engage with him, he's like, dude, just throw that in the trash and come have fun with me. Throw that in the trash, come live with me. Throw that in the trash, come hang out with me. That's really all it is. And it just, like I keep saying, it just feels so irresponsible to do so. But, it feels irresponsible to not take the world on our shoulders and try and fabricate a good life, which we can't do anyways. That's what's so cool. I'm not saying that following God is easy, because it's definitely not. It's simple.
There are storms.
There definitely are storms, but once you get the knack of it, and once you start understanding what his voice sounds like and what he truly wants for you, it gets so much easier and it's so much more enjoyable. I didn't get it at first when the Bible kept talking about rejoice and finding joy and stuff. And it's like, find joy through suffering. Dude, my mom just died. How am I supposed to find joy in this? This relationship ended. How am I supposed to find joy in this? But every time I'm challenged with that, God's like, okay, why don't you zoom out, not focus on the death and focus on the life with me instead? Because there's so much more outside of our limited perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really important to note the whole topic started off on just like, why is God not addressing things the way I think that he should? And you had to understand that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, and Jesus called things that are not as though they are. So Jesus is going to always see you higher than you will ever see yourself. And you have the option to believe that his perception is correct, or you have the option to believe that his perception is incorrect. Mm-hmm. And the way that you swing in those directions determines the kind of person that you become. You can become more like Christ by accepting his view of your life. And yes, you have to understand, he calls things that are not as though they are. So he will call you into things that you may not presently be, but you will become them if you partner by faith with what he's saying about your life. So if he says to you, like he has said to me, you are not a porn addict, I've set you free from that. In that moment, was I a porn addict? Yes. And I continued to use it a lot. But Jesus sees something different. And I had to make the decision to believe that what he sees is more correct than what I see on the surface. And so a lot of that first 7 years of victory came out of just shifting my perspective of seeing myself free, so that when I came into this new season of 2020, and there's all these new stressors and things of that nature, that was a foundation. So the whole time, even though I was struggling, I always had the foundation of, I'm free. And so I just need to figure out what is going on so we can deal with this, so that way, like, this, whatever this is, goes away. And I felt like in the moment that, granted, there was maybe something that I hadn't quite dealt with yet, but it didn't change my freedom. I was still free. I kept seeing myself that way. And now I have an even deeper understanding of just how free I am because of all that I went through, and all that you, like Tim, like all the things that you went through in 2020 is going to help you overcome the world by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So you have a whole year of things that you had to work through and process, that now that Jesus is coming to the meat and potatoes, you have all of that to become now a solid foundation for whatever else he decides to address down the road. So It's like, and I view that the same way with what I'm going through. So it's just like, it's like sometimes we want Jesus to address certain aspects of our lives that we think are problems, but he's above them and sees they're not problems. And so even though they may technically be problems in the natural, when he calls us to something, he's already seen the end result. And if we choose to partner with what he sees, that will eventually manifest itself. It's not a works-based thing where, okay, I have to pray this into existence like 5 times a day. I got to read the word a certain amount of time. I got to be this amount accountable or whatever. No, it's not a formulaic thing. It's, do I want to partner with what God's positively saying about me, or what my negative things my brain is trying to convince me of? Because where your focus is, that's the direction you'll head in. So if Jesus is shifting focus to what you think is a problem to something else, like you're saying, Tim, keep in mind, like, he's calling you away from what you think the problem is, because it's not a problem. If it was a problem, he would address it. And it's important to come to a place to trust him enough that he knows what the problem is, and he knows your number, and he knows how to get you to address that problem and to convict your heart of it. But if he's not doing that and you keep going to him about it, let's shift our view. It's not a problem. If it's not a problem to Jesus, it's not a problem to me.
It's so weird because the past couple weeks, I feel like God is just wanting me to be lazy. You know, not lazy is not, once again, not being at the point where I'm not responsible for myself, because I need to brush my teeth. I need to do our dishes. I need to do whatever, but just live life from the position of not taking the little things too seriously. Because for a while, man, like, I stressed about that, you know, because there were all these things that I was trying to be: a good husband, a good leader, a good role model, a good example, a good friend, good whatever, you know. And every time I would enter into one of those, I would put on one of those different hats. There was a lot of performance that I felt had to come with it, and it wasn't authentic. It was something. It's the whole fake it till you make it thing, right?
Yeah.
And when you do that, there's this weird complex that you get where it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to fake it till I make it, what, you know, there's all this, it's almost like a regret that you feel that you're not naturally inclined towards that. It's like, okay, well, if I'm having to fake it to be valuable in the situation, to be what I think I need to be, then who I am naturally is not good enough. Right. And so, you know, there is merit in aspiring to being better and aspiring towards denying yourself.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you're so focused on that and you attach your identity to the behavior, because what you were just talking about a few minutes ago about all the porn stuff, it's like, it's really easy to get wrapped up in thinking that our identity is our behaviors. But, you know, God rips that apart and he's like, nope, that's not how it works. You know, your identity's over here, and there's nothing you can do to change that. And guys, that's like, oh gosh, that's such a big point and such a big thing that God has taught me, is that no matter what you do, you can't change your identity, right? Whether you think I'm a guy in a girl's body, if you think I'm a girl who likes guys, if you think I'm an alcoholic and I'm trying to pursue Jesus, if you think I'm only a good husband if I'm making X amount of money, whatever, you know, God cares about those things too, but he never, ever, 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 ever looks at any of that stuff and associates that with your identity. Your identity is apart from all of it, right? And it gets trickier with certain things like sexuality and whatnot, but, you know, you whether you're an effeminate guy or a butch woman, you know, that doesn't matter. You're still a woman. You're still a guy.
Yep.
You're still a husband. You're still a son. Like the story of the prodigal son. Like, nothing you do can change your role in your relationship with God. And that's what he wants to address first.
That prodigal son wished his father dead, got half of the inheritance, went and spent it, and blew it all, and got to a place where he was dirty, eating slop. And that did not change the fact that he was still his father's son.
Yeah. And well, the other thing too is his, you know, when the son went to the father and he was like, I'm sorry, I screwed up. And, that's exactly what I was feeling this morning. It's like, I'm trying so hard to be something that I'm not. I've made all these mistakes. I've done all this stuff. And the dad didn't care. He's like, well, so what? Here, take this. Yeah. Give him the ring, give him his authority back, give him a coat, let's slaughter the finest calf that we have. And it's like, that sounds so easy, just to go back to your father after you've done all this stupid stuff and for him to say, well, give him everything again. But that's exactly what the gospel is. God sees who you are before all the other stuff. And that's why it seems irresponsible to follow the simplicity of the gospel. I don't know. Our only responsibility is to just have a relationship and be open to what he's saying and listen.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, so all I have to do is listen to what God's saying. What am I trying? What does that look like right now? Oh, I'm talking to God about all this stuff, and He's not even paying attention to it. Okay, well, what does He mean with that? Why is He not paying it? Oh, He wants me to put my coat and my ring back on. Okay, we're supposed to go over here having fun because we've already dealt with this.
Yeah. If He's not worried about it, it's not a problem as you think it is, and you worrying about it continuing to go beyond where he's currently at is just making it harder on yourself for something that's not who you are.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes people are afraid to trust God because they're afraid that by being obedient to him, he's gonna call you to something extremely hard or worse or terrible, whatever. And so they don't want to be obedient because it's like, oh, that looks like pain or whatever, or something. Like, I feel like there's some people that there was some things I didn't want to submit to God about because I was afraid he was going to call me to Africa to minister to people, and that's not a bad thing, but like I'm not a very athletic person whatsoever. I'm very, there's a lot of things that I function better in. So just like, oh God, I was like, I don't know. And then here God is, and he's given me callings to England and Japan. It's like I feel like a lot of times, like, we're afraid to bring things to God because we have these expectations of what he's going to call us to do. And sometimes he does call us to do things that we don't want to do. But his yoke is easy and his burden is light, and what he has to give on the other side of your obedience is far better than what you presently have, in a way that truly is something that you will enjoy, whether it be immediately then or a little bit down the road after you've gone through it a couple times. Either way, you can trust God that in your obedience there's something better for it. So if you are trying to go to God to fix a certain issue in your life and he's not addressing, he's addressing other things, trust that he knows what he's doing. That he wants best for you better than you want best for you. And that he's going to deal with the more important things to get you where you want to be and need to be. And he's trustable. And of course, he's not going to force you through it, because there would be no free will if he were to force you into doing something. And he loves you too much to have to control what you should say or do. That's just, love allows people's imperfections and doesn't throw them away. Not to say that the imperfections aren't imperfections, they still are, but gives you grace and space to work through those places. But you can trust him that if he's not working in a specific area right now, that means that either A, it has nothing to do with who you are, and you can let it be, or two, or B, that it's something that he will take care of, and you don't need to stress yourself over. The stress is not going to produce righteousness. Striving does not produce righteousness. Believing in what God says about you produces righteousness. Believing what his word says about you produces righteousness. Obedience produces righteousness. Those are the things that truly move God and repositions you for greater things. So, yeah.
Well, I think, Brandon, I think we're good.
We did it, and we did it in an hour. Wow, that's amazing. Awesome. Well, this is great. I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we will be live again this Friday at 4, and we'd love to have you there for that because we'll have a particular topic planned. And hopefully, I don't know if it's going to be this week or next week, we'll even have a special guest. So we'll once we know if it's going to be this week or next, we'll let you know who and when. So you definitely want to be there for that because I've got an exciting guest who will be talking about some things that kind of hit a little bit home for me. So more on that later. If this stream has really blessed you, please consider subscribing to us. We need donations to continue to expand Thought Raid, improve the quality of our streams, hire people that can, increase the graphics, like what we got, like make them better, engage you guys better, all that kind of stuff. We want to make this into a complete and total full-time ministry that we can constantly expand and reach you guys in deeper and better ways. We are here to serve you. So every dollar given to us will go into that. Our goal is $25,000 per month. So if you feel motivated or moved to do so, the link is down below in the description on both YouTube and Facebook. If you follow that, we have subscriptions starting at $1 and they move up from there. So we would love to have that. Each one comes with specific perks, some of which we are still working on, some of which have already gotten down pat. But we'd love to have you be involved in that. And again, I just want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again this Friday, 4 p.m. You guys have a good night.